Blue Ridge Springs Road, Blue Ridge, and identified on the tax maps as 103-92. And who would like to pick this up? Jonathan?
Well, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For you tonight is a request to rezone a piece of property from residential R1 to agricultural A1 to place a second home on the property and to grow and sell Christmas trees. You've already read the legal advertisement, which saves me a lot of breath, so I'll skip right over that and get right into the meat of things. So the property in question here tonight is outlined in red. Mr. Corey's property is 5.37 acres and is currently zoned residential R1. The property is accessed off Blue Ridge Springs Road and is served by private water and septic. As you can see on the screen before you, there is some agricultural property zoned immediately to the right of Mr. Corey's property and across Blue Ridge Springs Road. Mr. Corey has stated that his intent is to place a second home on the property and utilize the first residence and garage as an independent living unit for his daughter. He's also stated and shown on his submitted site plan, which I'll show you in a few slides, that he intends to grow and sell Christmas trees from the property. This slide provides an aerial view, which reveals some of the ongoing work that Mr. Corey has done on the property to date. Mr. Corey has applied for a building permit to place a private garage accessory to a now voided permit for a principal residence. Upon a routine inspection, staff discovered a residential space built on top of the garage. Mr. Corey amended his building permit at this time to a single-family dwelling and also applied for a separate permit to place another single-family dwelling on the property. This rezoning is necessary to permit that second residence on the property, just to give you some context as to why we're here tonight. This slide depicts the recent boundary line adjustment that was conducted to get the current building into compliance with the side setbacks in the agricultural A1 district. The building itself was constructed a little too close to the side property line. So the adjacent property owner sold, I guess, some land over to Mr. Corey. It's less than, I think, a fifth of an acre. It's a very small piece. I think it's something like 0.083 acres. So just enough to actually get into compliance there with the side setbacks of A1. The background report details some of the neighborhood concerns of this property, as well as some of the ongoing permitting and enforcement actions we've undertaken in working with the property owner. I would like to draw some attention to the onerous information included in the background report that goes into some detail about a grass complaint in 2019. You'll see it amended in the background report. It was outlined in red and also struck from the record. That was completely my fault. I should have caught that. It was actually a grass complaint that took place before the Coreys owned the property. So please disregard that. It has nothing to do with the current property owners. This slide and the next several include photos of the property. The photos taken depict some of the construction equipment on the property, some of the ENS, erosion and sediment control, and measures found on the property, as well as the debris pile cited in several of the public comments. These photos before you were taken prior to the Planning Commission. So what you'll see over the next several slides is kind of a timeline of events. The pictures right here before you are taken just before the Planning Commission meeting and show the debris pile that's mentioned in some of the concerns that you've seen in the background report, as well as some of the efforts to mitigate some of the erosion and sediment control. And I apologize for some of these photos being a little smaller. It goes into some more pictures here. You'll see in the foreground of this larger picture in the middle, some of the debris associated with the construction of the property. This was taken on an adjacent property, looking onto the property itself. This is looking at kind of the side view of the actual garage and residence that's being constructed currently. This next one takes the pictures of some of the barrels that you may have seen in the background report. There were some complaints about storage of some metal barrels. Those are behind the building. They have since been removed by the applicant. I actually went out there today and took a few photos that you'll see here in a little while. The applicant has done a pretty good job of cleaning up some of the items that you see in these pictures. And you'll see them in just a few. These photos were provided by the applicant at the Planning Commission meeting, showing the property as it was. I believe these photos were taken the day of the Planning Commission meeting or just the weekend before. So the pictures you saw earlier were taken before the Planning Commission. These are taken on the property either the day of or just before the Planning Commission, from the road looking onto the property itself. This shows kind of the rear view and the side view of the property, showing those barrels have been removed and some of the site has been leveled out and cleaned up. Also submitted by the applicant. And then these photos are the photos I took myself this morning. Went out there. Mr. Corey was very welcoming of me to come onto the property. Called him. He said it was totally fine for me to kind of walk around, despite me wearing some dress shoes and picking up some mud. I took a look around the property. A lot of the stuff had been cleaned up. There are, a few piles here of some of the debris that's been burned from the property. There is some timber on the back end of the property as well. Nothing here that I saw would generate any sort of a zoning violation or anything like that. Some additional photos. The photo to the right was on the back side of the property looking towards the building. Took a photo of the silt fencing that's still up there. And then this is a gravel pile that's right in the driveway there, which I believe is intended to be added to the actual driveway when the structures are built. The property owner submitted a conceptual site plan outlining where existing drives are on the property, as well as the location of a proposed Christmas tree sales. Those are listed in green, as you see here. The yellow portions are the existing lawn, and then the pink portion is the second home that's intended to be built on the property if this rezoning is passed. The orange bits are the actual current driveway, and then the proposed driveway to kind of circle the property itself. The applicant had asked me to include this in the actual PowerPoint here for you. These are the proposed plans for the additional structure on the property. I know this is very faint, probably a little hard to see, but it does show the front, rear, and side elevations of the property. That would be where the actual pink structure is, kind of in the middle of that piece of that plat shown there. The applicant, following the planning commission meeting, met with staff, discussed the opportunity to submit some voluntary proffered conditions. We worked through what that may look like, and the applicant has submitted this. It's been signed and notarized as well. You have the opportunity to accept all as written, to accept some or none. They're outlined here. The intent was, as I understand it, was for the applicant to show what uses he intended to do and what uses he had no interest in doing and was fine to actually remove from the possibility for the property. So he went through, looked at several of the A1 uses that are listed in our zoning ordinance and then proffered those out. First one is the intent of the property. So the purpose of the rezoning request is to build 2 single-family dwellings, cultivate and harvest Christmas trees, and sell off-site. So the intent is to not have anybody on the property actually selecting those Christmas trees. You'll be growing those trees, harvesting them, and then taking them elsewhere to sell. He has proffered out and has no intention of doing those 1 through 9. So agricultural intensive, cemetery, church, group home, cabin, or cottage, mobile manufactured homes, natural areas, parks, unlighted playground, sawmill, small scale, school, public, telecommunications tower, temporary family health care structure, temporary meteorological tower, homestay, and stable commercial. He's also kept that proffer that would disallow swine on the property should it be rezoned to A1. He's also proffered out the ability to store heavy machinery over 20,000 pounds on the property. And he's also proffered substantial conformance to that proposed site plan, including the location of 2 single-family dwellings and the location of Christmas trees for off-site sales. So the requested action here tonight is to either approve or deny or table the rezoning request by the Coreys. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Believe in your packet there, I think it's on page 96 if I read it right, is an extract from the Planning Commission that goes over some of the items that were discussed by the Planning Commission, some of the comments and concerns expressed by members of the public that were here, and some other details as well. So if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
On item 4, on the sawmills, could we get a little better definition of what's proffered out there?
Sure. So sawmill small scale is a use in our ordinance in A1. That is one that is directly from the ordinance. The sawmill that's just listed sawmill, I would assume, and this is totally an assumption, that is intended to be sawmill temporary. We can maybe work on that and talk to the applicant about what he intended there. Could be an omission, could just be blanket no sawmills, but I would want to really nail that down to provide you some more information.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Other questions for Jonathan? Okay.
What's the definition of?
Homestay. So I don't have the word for word definition for you. If you have in your mind an Airbnb or Verbo or something like that, that's what that is. We have a few different homestays that are permitted. They all require an application and some require an SCP. So it's essentially just a Verbo or Airbnb of that nature.
Stay.
Yeah, that would be the way I understand it. That would be if somebody has horses and needs somewhere to store them for a while, they can store them in your stable there on your property. Yeah, so I had to look up myself because obviously I don't do a lot of heavy machinery operation. Looking at dump trucks, backhoes, that type of stuff. There's a long list that I'm sure Mr. Corey would probably be able to give you a more detailed answer for, but we're looking at something that would be kind of in commercial and heavy operation. Correct. Yeah, right. So as the applicant is constructing his building there, as he's doing work on the property, heavy machinery would be a nature of the actual improvements and construction ongoing there, but long-term storage would not be permitted. And that speaks, if I may, it speaks to some of the comments that were mentioned at the public hearing. There were some concerns from folks that attended about heavy machinery or log trucks traveling along Blue Ridge Springs Road. It's an unpainted kind of narrow road. So that, I believe, was an intent to try to assuage some of those concerns.
This strikes me as a little bit odd, some of these provisions. No swine. Okay. What does that leave that can be on the property?
Yeah, so swine is one that we see a lot in agricultural A1 properties. They probably produce a lot more smell and noise compared to some other animals. You could do horses, you could have cows. Believe you would be able to have other types of hoofed animals. There's a long list of what's included in agriculture, but kind of what you would think in your head about what would be agricultural, what would be farm animals you'd have on this property, with the exclusion of swines.
So they're asking that anything but swine, anything that's allowed in A1.
Right. So number one excludes the intensive agriculture. So you wouldn't be able to have kind of a stockyard there, but you would be able to keep some cows, you'd be able to keep some horses, that type of stuff, but it wouldn't be to the level that would require, hundreds of acres or that type of stuff. Property is less than 6 acres. So you would be a little bit limited as to what you'd be able to do there as far as agriculture is concerned. I believe the intent is to do mostly just the Christmas tree sales, but it would not disallow him from keeping cows or horses or animals of that nature on the property.
Would not allow it.
Would not disallow him from doing so. So he would be able to keep them on the property.
Other questions from board members?
There is the property to the right is zoned A1 and the properties across Blue Ridge Springs Road are A1. Let me back up a few slides. There's a lot of pictures in here, so it's going to move a little slow. There we go. Yeah, all the yellow is R1. Anything in that lighter green is A1. The property to the back across Old Tram Road is AR.
So your intent, Jonathan, with your photographs is to demonstrate that the space has been cleaned up?
Mr. Corey invited me to come to the property. We had a meeting with him last week. He invited me to come take a look, take my own pictures, get a feel for the property. I decided to take him up on that. I wanted to take pictures that would represent what the property looked like today. As of today, the pieces that were shown in those photos at the Planning Commission meeting, a lot of those are gone, have been removed from the property. I can't comment as to what might happen in the future, but as of today, the barrels were gone. A lot of the trash and debris that people had complaints over were gone. But that's just what I saw today. So my intent was to include that just to get kind of a before, right during the Planning Commission meeting, and then right after.
I guess arguably that doesn't have anything to do with it, really, does it? As far as what we're about, evaluating the upkeep of a piece of property that's up for rezoning. It's
Sure,
not a
yeah.
consideration, I don't think, is it?
Absolutely. And, we're complaint based. So if somebody, regardless of whether it's A1 or R1, we do have some limits as to what we can enforce on A1. So grass and weeds is something that state code prohibits us from actually enforcing. But other pieces, prohibited uses, we could go and actually cite and take a look at. But this would not prevent us from doing our regular code enforcement on either R1 or A1.
Anything else?
Is this lot large enough to split and keep it as R1?
Depends on what type of division you would need to do. I believe a family subdivision is only permitted in the A1 and FC districts. R1 does not permit a family subdivision off the top of my head. So you would need to do just a regular subdivision. I'm looking, see Nick in here. I'm looking at Nicole for a second on what the 20,000 square foot minimum for R1 lots for a subdivision. Yeah. So 20,000 square foot. So I think just shooting off the cuff, you could technically do that. But you wouldn't be able to do a family subdivision.
Thanks.
Okay, does the proposer care to address the board?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Evening.
So to clarify, if you look to the left of the property right there, that field is A1. So I am completely surrounded by A1. Okay. And I heard a couple of your questions, so let me address those. Okay. 20,000 pound machines, bulldozers, backhoes, track loaders. I have a mini excavator I own for my construction company, and I have a skid steer I own, which I utilize for farm equipment as well. Okay. Profit of swine. It was asked of me by the member of the planning commission that lives in the Blue Ridge and is a neighbor of mine, that would be proper if I could proffer out swine. That would help me, according to him. So I proffered swine. I like bacon, but I'm not going to keep pigs. So I have no interest in keeping pigs on the thing. The sole interest of this property is to go A1. Okay. So I can build a second house for my daughter who has cerebral palsy. Okay. It is also, my daughter will probably never hold a job in her life. Okay. She doesn't have that cognitive ability to hold that. Christmas trees would give her something where she could prune. She loves to be outside and she could sell them. We're going to meet a need for the public. There's very few suppliers that have trees over 10 foot. So when we harvest a tree, it will be years down the road, but she has to tend to those trees for years before we could harvest one of them. Okay. No one's coming to the property to pick their tree out and buy them. It is solely to get the second residence for my daughter. Now, is there a way you can bring up the, yeah.
Just bear with me. Is it?
Yeah, you're all right.
There it is.
So when you look at the site plan down where the yellow is up in the front, close to Blue Ridge Springs Road, where number 1 is, which is the number 1 lot line. All of that is existing grassland. It's never been disturbed, never been touched. The orange circle that is there, that is an existing driveway that goes to the previous drive, to the existing driveway that goes up to the paved drive where it says paved, where I built the garage. All the green areas are where I plan to plant trees. 2 reasons I plan to plant trees. Okay. That property receives an enormous amount of runoff. I fought it for the last 4 years. I've had engineers out there. I've had Oya Construction, which Botetourt County hired out there. And we've gone above and beyond to put E&S measures in, but the trees would also help that runoff. Okay. So, you know, preliminary for 10 to 12 foot trees, you usually need to be about an 8 to 9 foot by 9 foot area. I can get about 85 trees tactfully on the property without making it look like I've, you know, planted trees and nobody can see anything on my property. If I go down the right side and left side of my property, there's a huge area between what I call the garage mahal and the future house. There's a big cleared area that I can plant trees there. And then there's a good strip in front of the new house where I can plant as well. With that, that'll definitely help the runoff in all directions. So, nothing changes. This property had a house on it. And I was building the garage with a future apartment above it, but giving that, I met some resistance with past zoning and the 4 different building officials. Apparently you can't build for future in Botetourt County. So they made me finish it, which brought us to A1. Now, there's nothing to be hidden here. I'll answer any question you got. With my daughter having the cerebral palsy that she does, I mean, A1 district is going to put us in the lower tax bracket as well. Okay. That is big to us. My wife is a school teacher. I own several businesses. I've never asked anybody for help. I've never asked the state for help. I've never asked anybody for a handout. We paid for everything on our own. We'd like to continue. A1 does bring us into a lower tax bracket, and it allows us to build a second house for my daughter, which is intention. The garage apartment above the garage is going to be her future residence. The main house is our house. She'll never live independently. She's always going to have some care. So if you have any questions for me, I have my house plans here. If you'd like to look at them, I'll be happy to honestly answer anything you got.
What's your timeline on building the second house?
The house is 9,000 square foot, so it's probably going to take me 2 years.
9,000 square feet?
Yes, sir.
The one that you propose to build?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Wow. But when do you propose to do that?
Well, I spoke to Mr. McCoy earlier. My plans for the house have already been reviewed and approved by Botetourt County one time. So it is our understanding with Mark Bowles, the new building inspector, that if there's no hiccups that he says we have to re-review them, I mean, if this is approved to A1, we'll have the foundation in within 3 weeks. I've already paid for the foundation. I've already paid for the entire framing package. My goal is to have the house under roof by the start of winter.
Okay. Further questions from anyone? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I will open the public hearing. And we have a number of comments from citizens. First one is Brian Blake.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Brian Blake. I live with my family at 1955 Blue Ridge Springs. I'd like to thank you for having me be able to speak tonight. I'd also like to say that, currently I feel like don't have any hard feelings against the Corys, have no opposition to them whatsoever, not opposed one bit to them residing on Blue Ridge Springs Road. I feel like much of the concerns that the neighbors surrounding have is because most of those properties, even those owned A1, have covenants and restrictions that they must follow. And a lot of that pertains to business. A lot of that contains to things that would typically be allowed in A1 are not allowed along Dale Ridge 1 and Dale Ridge 2. So there are some restrictions that are in place in those houses right across the street that I'd like to bring to your attention. And those covenants, we try to follow as careful as possible, even though some people may not attend to everything. Mr. Corey addressed the timeline on construction. Appreciate him doing that. I know it's taken 4 years to get to where we are right now. That is a primary concern for everyone around that, especially the adjacent neighbors that have been impacted by sediment runoff, smoke from, burning, construction debris, things of that nature. There's a lot of neighbors that are a lot closer than I am that have been directly impacted, not myself. There's 3 neighbors that have been. And if he can get, the house done in that time period that he says he can, that's, much improved from the 4 years that we've gotten to this point. I know zoning typically does not move backwards. The current R1 zoning on the property has somewhat been, for lack of better words, maybe taken advantage of. That's a definite concern of the neighbors is where are we going to go if it goes A1? I would think nothing better for Mr. Corey to live there with his family and do as he says. We just want to make sure that there aren't other businesses, subsequent things that come in later. I understand the 20,000 pounds. That's typically like a bulldozer. Most smaller equipment is going to be 10,000, 12,000. Full-size backhoes weigh around 14, 15, 16,000. Our main concern, my last concern is honestly, what's the property ultimately going to be used for? There's multiple businesses that are listed there with the state corporation commission that are currently listed there. Everybody just, hey, don't have any problem with Mr. Corey as a neighbor, but just want to know what the final intent's going to be on the property. Some honest answers there on what is going to be operated, what's going to be coming and going. That's a neighborly thing to ask. I don't have any problem, and none of my current neighbors. I don't operate my business out of my property at 1955. I have a building that is on Shenandoah Avenue, 2 acres that houses my company. So just want to thank you again for hearing me. And if I can close with just one thing, I approached Botetourt County Building and Zoning with 2 things. One of them, Mr. Nicely touched on. Can the property be split in R1 stay to help protect? Because the houses across the street somewhat conform to an R1 zoning. The other was, could a variance be issued that reins in some of those R1 restrictions? Some of the things that were pointed out earlier are not major issues for the neighbors around the Corey property. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do board members have questions? Donna Blake.
Hi, my name is Donna Blake. I reside at 1955 Blue Ridge Springs Road. We actually moved out to Blue Ridge about 17 years ago, and we bought the property around 10 years ago and built our home and in the Dale Ridge subdivision. We love it out there because it's peaceful and quiet. I do have many concerns. I actually work from home and have watched debris come into the site and soil come into the site. Almost like there is a construction area and dumping. And I've also watched burning take place working from home and taking the dogs out in the front yard. I, as well as Brian, have no concern with the Corys being there. It's just what's going to happen down the road. We bought the property in Dale Ridge subdivision because there were restrictions, and I have the restrictions with me tonight, and there's several restrictions. No businesses. These were covenants that were written into all of us in the A1 section across the street when we all bought part of the Foster farm. I guess my concern is that it's been R1 and he has not followed the R1 like he should have. And I have very deep concerns as to if granted A1, what is the future of the property? So, thank you.
Thank you. Questions from board members? Next is Jennifer Walker. Ah,
Get my specs on. I'm Jennifer Walker. I live at 1706 Blue Ridge Springs Road. I am directly next to the quarry property. And I just want to say, like 15 years ago, after the loss of my husband, my wish was to leave the busier Roanoke City area and find a piece of property with mountain views and a quiet, more rural setting to hopefully live out my retirement years. I am blessed to have found the little log cabin on lovely acreage on Blue Ridge Springs Road in Blue Ridge. I have always wanted respectful, cordial relations with all my surrounding neighbors, and I wish no ill will on anyone. And I want to have good relations with the quarries, and I really, really wish them well in all their endeavors. And I really like the idea of the Christmas trees. It is just my sincere hope that all of us follow county codes and regulations and maintain our homes and properties in a pleasing, respectful, and peaceful way so that our neighborhood can benefit as a whole. Thank you for your time and listening.
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And this is the last person who has signed up, Laurie Van Kuren.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. I appreciate it. As with everyone else who has spoke.
Ma'am, can you speak into the microphone a little bit?
Sorry, I'm short. Let me adjust it. I want to stress that I have no problems or issues with the quarries like everyone else has stated, and we will welcome them to the neighborhood with open arms. But I do have some concerns that I want to share, and they're mostly surrounded around the businesses that could be there. I know that the existing structure has pretty large garage areas, and also know that there's some of the businesses that the quarries own are food trucks, which come with a lot of traffic on that road. And that road is a very small and narrow road. We have a lot of children that live directly on the houses along Blue Ridge Springs Road. They play on that road. Just a week ago, I witnessed 3 children, 3 small boys around the age of 11. One was walking, 2 were riding bikes. Commercial traffic on that road would be detrimental. There's already, a lot of traffic on that road, but adding anything commercial wise would really have a negative impact. So that's my concern. Also, as was noted with some of the other speakers, we do have restrictions that go beyond the A1. Certain number of structures that can be on the property, no businesses, no livestock, chickens, swine, whatever. So if there's something that could be done that could allow for those restrictions, if it were to be granted, or to keep it as it is and maybe allow for the structure that they're asking for, I would welcome a compromise. I just have real concerns about what we've seen so far and what could be. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else wish to address this topic? I'm going to close the public hearing. If not, go ahead, Jonathan.
Just wanted to to make a point of clarification about the proffer statements, I believe with the advice of legal counsel that if you want to see an amendment to those proffer statements, that would need to be done before the public hearing portion is closed. If you're fine with them the way they are, then no need to worry. But if you want any amendments submitted or discuss that with the applicant, you would need to do that prior to the closing of the public hearing. Is that correct? Okay. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to close the public hearing. And ask the board to discuss this issue.
The owner speak.
Okay, briefly.
Is there anybody bring up the aerial of the property again?
My finger's going to get tired after all this.
Okay, perfect. I just got a few things to ease some concerns, okay? First of all, unfortunately, I think Miss Blake said there's no businesses on the road. There's 8 people that have businesses on the road. Peter Braddock's got a lawn care business. Regina Sink's got a sign business. And there's a food truck just down the road. With a food truck, people don't come to our houses and eat. We take the food truck elsewhere to eat. The restrictions. The left side of the road has restrictions. It was bought and sold by Dale Foster. He implemented those restrictions for the left side of the road. I didn't buy on the left side of the road. I bought on the right side of the road with every intention, after talking to the zoning that has moved to Florida, that I could do this to A1. Miss Walker stated that her property is to the right side. In 2021 or 2022, I believe, she filed for this very thing for wildflowers and horses and was granted without any problems. Yet I've never seen a wildflower or a horse on the property. Okay. I have businesses. I get after it. I have to take care of a family. I don't have businesses where people come to my house and we do things. I have an office that I store my paperwork in and leave. I don't have employees come there. I've proffered out everything on A1 that I could proffer out besides a home-based business. Okay. Besides a secondary structure, everything else is proffered out. I have no intention to keep livestock, pigs, horses, cows. I've proffered it all out. All I'm asking is A1 for my wife and I to build a second dwelling and plant some Christmas trees. I mean, I don't know how much more stuff I could proffer out for everybody to feel comfortable. So all I'm asking is you look at the situation that I'm facing with my daughter, grant me the A1 and let me get on building my second house. And I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Before you leave, just to clarify on
Yep.
item 4, your intent is no sawmills at all?
No sawmills.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ma'am.
And I intend to burn them.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Uh, Ma'am, we ask the people not speak to each other, just address the board.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
She gets a little animated.
Okay, the matter lies before us, board members. And the planning commission was 4-0, is that right? And with one abstention against, yeah. Okay,
should the property or when the property changes hands, the proffers go with that?
Yes, I believe the proffers run with the property.
So
The proffers do in fact run with the property. So anybody that purchased that
it would
property would
remain
be,
A1, should it be rezoned, but these proffers would remain in, how would you ever get rid of them?
you would need to
You
come
can't-
back before you all and request those proffers to be changed. It's happened a few times with other, I think Delville Town Center has happened a couple of times. You see it a lot with rezonings. If there is kind of a conceptual site plan and there's something that really changes with it, you can come before the board and request to those proffers be amended. So it'd be public hearing and same process we're going through tonight.
Quick questions from board members?
I'd like to talk a little more about, your point, Mr. Nicely. If it was R1 and it was subdivided, what's the advantage to going A1 as opposed to subdividing R1 if the main purpose is the second home? What are the pros and cons there?
You still have the R1 restrictions.
A1 opens up the Christmas tree option. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, he's proffered so many things out that it's almost R1 anyway.
Right.
I just think it's a better way to do this.
R1 or A1?
R1. Keep it there.
But we would lose the Christmas tree option if we did R1 and subdivided it.
I don't know why you still can't plant trees. I don't think R1 would restrict you planting trees.
Sorry, you can't subdivide R1 because there's not public water and sewer. That's the reason why
Oh,
you
so
couldn't
that's
create
not-
two lots in R1.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, man.
She's the smarter one.
Anything else from board members? Any questions?
And
How to ask? Go ahead.
maybe if I will, just to add a point of note about the home occupations. We've got 3 types of home occupations. 2 of those require a special exception permit. They're more intensive than what our by right home occupation is. That's still a permit that is submitted to our department and is reviewed internally, and is technically limited to 500 square feet of aggregate space on the property. So even if there is a couple different home occupation permits that are actually granted to this property, they wouldn't necessarily get out of control, for lack of a better word. They would still have several conditions that would need to be met that would be enforced by our department as well. So just wanted to remind you all of that as well.
John, there was a picture there that he was gonna sit there and kind of surround that area with trees and kind of a barrier,
Yes.
all the way around the property. I think you had up at one point in time,
His site plan, I think.
I think it was just like.
Yeah, there you
This
go.
one.
There you go. And that the road frontage is, show me where where that, right there is the road.
Yes, this is Blue
There's
Ridge
no
Springs
trees
Road.
right there. Is that correct? Or-
There, I mean, there's a few trees here in the existing lawn area, but there are no proposed Christmas trees to be planted in this area.
We ready for a motion? I'm going to be looking at the Blue Ridge Supervisors. This is your district.
Put trees in the front.
The biggest thing in my mind is we have turned this over to the planning commission, who is supposed to be our people to advise us. And with their vote,
You're I didn't understand that. You're proposing to turn it back to the. planning
Yeah,
commission?
no, I was saying that
He just
with the
observing
vote
their
that,
vote.
the vote that was done by the planning commission, who is our experts in this field, uh, gives me some pause as to which way to go, because
Mhm.
I'm depending on them to advise us.
Yeah, Jonathan, do you know what some of their reasoning was, for opposition?
Jonathan, maybe you should stay up there.
Maybe. Sorry, I need more steps today anyways. I'm
Okay.
not quite at 6,000. So there's a few reasons. I think there were some concerns about the existing condition of the property over the past several years, the pace of the building of the actual structure, some of the ongoing that has since been mitigated erosion and sediment control issues on the property. There was some discussion about going from R1 to A1. There was some concerns about, I think the words they used was lack of a concrete plan for the property and the uses that would be permitted there. That I think the proffer statements probably address a good deal of. Trying to think of some other stuff, but I think that's kind of surmises the majority of the comments and reasons for the 4-0 vote.
Were these proffers brought to the planning commission?
No, the only proffer that was
Since
submitted
that
was
vote.
the proffer about the swine. Those were submitted to our department about 4:30 today. So those are brand new. We did, myself and Matt Lewis met with the applicant and went over some of those proffer statements about a week or so ago. And we kind of discussed what those might look like and what options he'd have moving forward. And that does reflect the conversation that we had as well. But we just received them today.
Seems like a lot of the reasons that the planning commission put forth are only distantly relevant to a zoning change. The past performance on the property kind of thing.
At the planning commission meeting, there was a lot of conversation about the past uses of the property, the condition of the property, potential for ongoing, I guess, concerns on the property. The proffer statements do limit a lot of what would be permitted in A1. So that's one piece that was kind of reflected post planning commission. So I think the applicant has made some efforts to kind of mitigate some of those concerns, but ultimately the decision is up to you all.
If there's no more discussion, I'll entertain a motion. Now, if there isn't a motion, just to get it on the table, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for approval. Is there a discussion? Board members? All right, all in favor of the motion that we approve this zoning request, please say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
So I didn't,
I'm opposed as well.
so, and you're the tiebreaker then.
Can we ask legal counsel, is it appropriate to, since we have additional proffered conditions that the planning commission didn't have the opportunity to look at, to get their opinion with these new proffers?
Well, the board does have the option of kicking it back down to the planning commission, but adding proffers is something that often happens in response to comments that were made during public hearing at planning commission. There's nothing unusual about that, but if the board as a whole feels that it's so substantively changed this that they need further recommendation from the planning commission, that is within your power.
Thank you.
Here we have 2-2.
I'll say yes.
Okay, so 3 approvals, 2 denials. The approvals have it. Thank you, everyone.
It is pouring.
Very much so.
Pardon?
Holy
Oh.
moly.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
You want?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
I'll second.
And moving and seconded that we adjourn. If you're in favor, say aye. Aye. Word.
Thank you.
Can I get your comments in?